Hello and welcome. This is indeed our 20th episode. Wow, 20 episodes of the Denver Homes Market Report. If you tuned in last week, you may still be in shock. I mean, come on, right? How on earth, with all that's going on, could we close more than 1,100 deals in the month of July 2020 when compared to the same month last year? The reality is, there are still buyers looking to buy. There are still sellers looking to sell. In fact, part of my session last week, I dedicated it to some of the reasons why this phenomenon might be happening. However, with it being the end of month recap show for July 2020 versus 2019, I really did not spend as much time on explaining the reason today's low rates are such a huge deal. So today, we'll forego the usual neighborhood focus and really do a deep dive into why now may be the best time to upsize or downsize your current home. And perhaps, if you don't own a home, why right now may be your golden opportunity. There are many reasons as to why the real estate market has been doing so well during this pandemic. One of the overall driving factors are the interest rates, with rates coming in at around and even below 3%. I mean, come on. These are not some teaser rates where the bank locks the rate at 3%, then in 3 or 5 years later, they start adjusting up. Or some sort of reverse amortization type loan. No, not at all. The mortgage rates for a fairly standard 30-year fixed rate loan with at least 20% down, good credit, are right around 3%. Could you imagine telling someone from back in the 1980s, when we were leading up to the huge savings and loans debacle? Some of you may remember the interest rate to buy a home, if you wanted a 30-year fixed rate, you were looking at upwards of 12%. Yet, some have even told me their first home loan was set at 17%. So, it's no wonder that when rates come down to the 3% neighborhood, that things are going to heat up. My latest conversation are for those of you who own your own home. You know you're likely to sell within the next 3 to 5 years. In this case, do not jump on the refinance bandwagon. I mean, why would you do that to yourself? If you own your own home and you are thinking about moving in the next 5 years, by all means, now is the time. You can sell your home while the market is red hot. You can also buy your new home, and in doing so, you get rid of that old mortgage that you currently have at, say, 4% or maybe even higher, and move into your new home with a new rate of around 3%, and in some cases, even less. Depending on where your rate is now and what you plan on buying, you could save hundreds of dollars a month, all while enjoying your new home and taking advantage of today's low rates. If you are fairly certain you will not be selling your home within the next 5 years or so, call me. I'll get you in touch with my lender partner, Jaxanne Riggs of the Mortgage Network. Her and her team will be happy to talk to you and see if a refi makes sense in your situation. However, if you are thinking you'll either upsize or downsize within the next 5 years, call me so I can show you why making that move sooner than later might just be your smartest move yet. Just in case you don't have my number yet saved to your phone, please do so. My number here is ricky.schoonover, SCHOONO, V as in Victor, ER, Denver Realtor, 720-688-5110. Hit save. There, now you have my number handy. So what if you do not already own your own home? What if you have never bought before, or you have been renting and you're stuck in a lease? Do not despair. First off, the thing about a lease, check your fine print. You may realize that your landlord requires 3 months notice. Yes, 90 days before your current lease ends is when they expect you to know with almost certainty if you plan on renewing your lease for the next year. So here's what I have seen happen. I have a potential home buyer. They call me and say they want to buy a home. When we start talking about their current situation and their current lease, I find out that the lease is up at the end of next month. This may or may not be enough time. There are quite a few items we can get started on about 6 months out from the end of your lease. First and foremost, don't think of it as 6 months. Really think of it like this. You start looking closely with me and Jackson Riggs. I will really start helping you get a grasp on price points of the various neighborhoods where you may want to become a part of. Jackson can start talking to you about making sure your financial ducks are all in a row and how much home you can afford, so that in 3 months' time, you are 100% certain you'll be moving out at the end of your lease. You already know what your down payment will be, your approximate monthly payment, you know the type of home you want, you know the areas you can afford. Now we get to that point where you can tell your landlord that you will not be renewing your lease for the next year. And we take the next month or so to really hone in on the right home for you. Now remember, once you find the home, you offer on it. The seller accepts your offer. From that point, we still have about 30 to even 45 days before closing and getting the keys to your new home, which puts you nearly at the end of your lease. There may be 2 or 3 weeks overlap to give you time to make that move. There is another little tidbit of information here. When you close the deal on your home, part of the closing process is to prepay in your closing costs for the first month's mortgage. So depending on which day you close, you may have another full 45 or even 60 days before your first payment becomes due on your new home. So having that 2 or 3 week overlap where your rent is paid through the first and you have the keys to your new home, you can do some little projects, perhaps a fresh coat of paint or refinish the hardwood floors. These types of projects are 100% easier and more efficient when the house is empty. Once you move in all your personal belongings and furniture, it's kind of a pain to then attempt to refinish or lay floors. Even painting is more difficult. My point in all of this is the earlier you call me and get me involved, the more I can help you be prepared. The better prepared you are, guess what? That's the value of hiring me as your realtor. I have seen so many transactions. I know what to look for, and I will likely save you from a misstep that would cause you either more money, time, aggravation, or a combination of all three. Here's the kicker. Guess what? You as the buyer, 99.9% of the time, do not pay for your buyer broker. The seller, simply by virtue of participating in the MLS, has likely already agreed to pay a commission, and their listing broker has already agreed upfront to share that commission with whoever brings the buyer. So the overwhelming majority of real estate deals, you as the buyer pay exactly the same to your buyer broker, whether you work with them closely for months with proper planning and finding the perfect home, or you call them today and hurriedly write up an offer on a house you kind of found online. Guess what? you pay the same. 0. That's right. You as the buyer likely pay 0 for your buyer broker representation. Your buyer broker makes the same commission whether they work with you for a year or for just 1 month. We make the same amount of money, and that money is actually shared from the listing brokerage to the buyer's brokerage. So the seller pays the same regardless if you are a well thought out and well planned buyer, or you just happen to find their house that day and throw an offer on it. Now here's where planning can help you as a buyer. When your broker submits the offer, there are several questions asked and some documentation the seller may require before they accept your offer. They will for sure want a lender letter. This letter looks much more believable and convincing when the lender knows you, your financial situation, when they have indeed reviewed your last 2 years of taxes, when they can speak to your credit scores, your debt to income ratios, etc. If you plan ahead and you have a relationship with your realtor and your loan officer, those two professional relationships will help make you a stronger buyer. This may mean the difference between the seller accepting your offer or passing your offer up and taking the offer from another buyer who appears to be better prepared to execute this transaction. There have been many changes in the real estate industry over the past decade or so. There are much more reliance on big national brands of real estate brokerages, and more buyers are starting their searches out on a free quote-unquote home search site. These sites can be helpful. However, they are in no way a replacement for having a strong and trustworthy relationship between you and your realtor. Actually, just the opposite. Now more than ever, there are so many of those sites where they are simply providing you with what you think is a free service. Those sites are doing everything they can behind the scenes to harvest your data and sell it to the highest bidder by way of advertisement. So you have so much information and misinformation right there at your fingertips. It's so important you have a trusted real estate advisor to help you decipher what's good and relevant information and what is not. So reach out, give me a call, whether you're looking to buy soon or sometime down the road. The sooner you get me involved, the sooner I can start building your trust. I have an amazing home search website. It's the same IDX type site that the national brands utilize. In fact, my site is updated every 15 minutes to ensure the information is accurate. And don't forget, the listing brokerage likely has already agreed to share their commissions with your buyer broker. You as the buyer will likely not pay your buyer broker or their firm a dime. In the end, the seller usually pays the commission. Well, I hope I have made the case for those of you who own your own home. Do not spend the money on a refi if you may end up selling in the next 5 years. It just probably won't make financial sense. What you could do is sell your home now while the inventory is low, and in selling your home, that old higher rate mortgage also gets paid off. You get into your new home at a much lower rate. For those of you who don't own right now, the rates are low. Pre-planning is the key. So if you still have 6 months left on your lease, it's not too late, nor is it too early to call me. Let me show how to properly plan. This is going to help you find the right home and be prepared to buy that home once we do find it. You'll likely save some money and some frustrations of common missteps by properly planning. And remember, it costs you nothing more to get me involved early on. All right, I hope some of you are listening right now and thinking, wow, I always figured realtors charged like attorneys, and you were going to get socked with billable hours if you got them involved too early, and that by waiting till the last minute that it was somehow saving you money. It's not. In fact, it's likely costing you money. It could even be the difference between having your offer accepted or rejected. Same goes for listing your house for sale. I have a home right now. I have been able to help my sellers with some of the deferred maintenance. They are having their home spruced up a bit. I have helped them personally with trips to their storage unit as we are decluttering their home. My contractor has done quite a lot of work around the house. It's looking beautiful, and with my suggestions, I'm certain we'll have less buyer objections. Our photography is going to look amazing. Their home will surely net more dollars in my sellers' pockets simply because they got me involved early on. And guess what? It won't cost them a dime more than if they waited to the last minute to call me to list their home. In fact, it's almost certain they'll net more money. I will leave you with that thought. I do want to give you my phone number one more time. Ricky Schoonover of Mode Real Estate, MODE, 720-688-5110. Give me a call anytime. Please subscribe to our podcast. It comes out every week on Thursdays. You can simply ask your smart speaker, please play my podcast, the Denver Homes Market Report. I hope you all have a great week, and I'll be back here next Thursday.